Ladies and gentlemen, we will now go through the webinar etiquette. Please take note of the following. We have muted and turned off video of all the participants to ensure no disruptions throughout the webinar. Participants may ask or post questions related to the presentation in the chat box during the webinar. The speaker and moderator will only answer questions that are clearly written and based on the presentation. Kindly refrain from marketing your goods or services in the chat box. The chat box is only for queries related to the presentation. The organizer reserves the right to remove participants who run afoul of the webinar etiquette. It now gives me great pleasure to invite the Vice President of MPMA, Mr. C.C. Chia, to present the welcome remarks. Mr. C.C. Chia, you can begin.
Thank you, Darshini. Can you all hear from me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, all right. Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar entitled Circular Economy, Shaping the Industry for Global Competitiveness. I would like to thank Mrs. Dusseldorf, the organizer for K-Fair, Mrs. Worldwide, and Matrade for collaborating with MPMA for this webinar. The webinar will promote K-Fair, and the theme surrounding K for this year is circular economy and sustainability. A very fitting theme for the year, as this is an area of focus in the coming years. I will not go into the significance of the K-Fair and the theme. Instead, I'll leave it to the distinguished speakers to present on these topics. Instead, let me report to you on the performance of the plastic industry in the year 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2021, the plastic industry recorded a 21% increase in turnover from 48.46 billion ringgit in 2020 to 58.62 billion ringgit in 2021. This is a very huge, significant increase within a year. Exports recorded a 20% increase from 13.32 billion ringgit to 16.01 billion ringgit. The increase in exports was due to the reopening of most of the markets, I think the markets globally. Moving forward, for the plastic industry, it is important that companies continue to remain competitiveness by adopting the latest technologies to improve on productivity and quality. In this regard, what better way for companies to keep abreast with the newest than by visiting K, where the latest technology will be on display. Therefore, I strongly urge companies to consider visiting the K show this year. If there are companies who would like to join the Matrade Pavilion as exhibitor at K-Fair, please contact MPMA Secretariat or Matrade. In terms of competitiveness, more and more emphasis today is being placed on suppliers who adopt ESG or environmental, social, and corporate governance practices. You will be hearing more of this from the speakers today. Ladies and gentlemen, the business landscape for plastic industry is already under a lot of strain from the COVID and environmental factors like marine litter and global warming. The marine litter issue has resulted in the development of a global agreement to reduce plastic pollution. Further to this, industry customers are already looking at alternative materials or the usage of renewable resources. Therefore, industry must look at the adoption of the circular economy and the product innovation to meet these rising challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, the recent floods and the change in weather patterns is an effect of global warming. In this regard, I encourage companies to study your carbon emissions from manufacturing processes and look into the development of more sustainable products like renewable feedstock. Moving forward, Companies need to understand and get involved in the global adoption of sustainable business practices, participate in the circular economy, foster product innovation, and be ecological conscious and take due care of the environment. On this note, I once again would like to thank Mrs. Dusseldorf, Mrs. Worldwide, and Martrade for collaborating with MPMA to make this webinar possible. And I wish all of you a beneficial webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CC Chair. Now I would like to hand over to Ms. Lai Lin, the sales representative from Messe Worldwide, who will take us through the webinar.
Thank you very much, Darshini, for your kind words. And thank you, Mr. CC Chia, Vice President of Malaysian Plastics Manufacturers Association, for the opening remarks. We look forward to welcoming a really huge delegation from MPMA this October. And I am sure Mr. Thomas Franken, who will be our next speaker, will also want to say hello to everyone over here. Now, to get you through the motions today, we will start off with Mr. Thomas Franken, who has dialed in all the way from Germany. Welcome, Thomas, and I hope that you're wide awake and be able to present a little bit more than just what we heard earlier. How are you, Thomas?
Good morning from Germany and good afternoon to Malaysia. I hope everyone is well. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yes, I'm ready.
All right, so we're going to go straight into your presentation. Thomas is currently the director of K. He comes with many years of experience, and I know him personally as someone who's very dedicated to the plastics industry and also what K can do for you. And without further ado, let's bring on Thomas Franken.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lelin, and thank you very much for the nice introduction. In the next few minutes, I would like to provide you with an outlook on the world's #1 trade fair for the plastics and rubber industry, K in Düsseldorf, which will happening from the 19th to 26th of October. I also brought some slides and I now will try to share my presentation. So let me see. So I hope everyone can see the presentation. Is everything okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So first of all, just a few words about how things have been for us as a trade fair organizer in the last 2 years. And as you can imagine, the COVID pandemic has also had an especially substantial impact on our trade fair sector. Since the pandemic started, a lot of trade fairs, as you know, had to be called off, postponed, or held exclusively only online. But in this year, the total number of trade fairs will increase again due to the emerging endemic situation and also to the progress in vaccinations. Furthermore, our optimism is very boosted by the current feedback from our exhibitors who have already registered for K. And they told us that they can hardly wait to finally take part again in a face-to-face trade fair. Therefore, we are already looking forward to welcoming everyone back here in Düsseldorf, especially all participants, to take part live at K. So this is just the welcome slide. I would like to, just a second, I have to change some screen here. I would like to start, however, with a brief looking back in time, because this year we are celebrating K's 70th anniversary. 1952 saw the birth of K in Düsseldorf, and back then the age of producing mass plastics had just begun. For the first edition of K, there were, listen, just only 270 German companies that represented consumer products designed to make everyday life nicer and more convenient. These exhibits at this time were ranging from household plastic appliances up to, for example, nylon stockings. From that time on, K in Düsseldorf turned into a special interest trade fair for professionals as early as 1963 and became the world's most important meeting platform for the plastics and rubber industry. Since then, every 3 years, exhibitors and visitors from all over the world get together in Düsseldorf and use the opportunity to demonstrate this dynamic industry, to discuss the latest trends on a global level, and also to set the course of the future. You have already seen our short clip from K 2019, which I also brought up here today. And This was just like to get an idea and to show you also some impressions of our show. So I think you don't have to see that again. But I also brought next to our impressions also some facts and figures from last edition. First of all, I would like to take a short look on the figures of last edition from the exhibitor side. There is no other industry platform with such a high internationality than K in Düsseldorf. Here you can see that in 2019, we welcomed more than 3,330 exhibitors from 63 countries. And more than 2,300 companies came from Europe, 828 from Asia, 143 from America, and we also had 11 participants from Africa and 4 from Australia. We can also keep an eye on our visitor figures from last edition. In 2019, we welcomed visitors from 169 nations in total, and 73% of all trade visitors in Düsseldorf are international visitors because they traveled outside of Düsseldorf, outside of Germany to Düsseldorf. 57% of all our visitors come from Europe, and 25% from Asia, 13% from America, and 4% from Africa. This is the most important slide because here you can see the structure of K 2022. At the next edition, again, the who's who of the global plastics and rubber industry will again be part of the show. For that reason, you see that all our exhibition halls will be fully occupied again with more than 170,000 square meters. Here you can see the structure of the show and the focus of each hall. You see the blue halls are the biggest group of our exhibitors at K. These are our manufacturers of machinery and equipment, and they will again present a lot of world premieres to the global trade audience during the show. They will occupy around 2/3 of the total exhibition space, and they are located in the halls 1 to 4, which you can see here, and 9 to 17. Exhibitors with raw materials are allocated in hall number 5 to 8B, here in yellow and green, and in the same halls you will also find exhibitors with semi-finished products, technical components, or reinforced plastics products. Since the topic of circular economy and recycling is one of the most important topics within the industry, we have decided to give this topic a special focus for the next edition. And for that reason, we also grouped all these exhibitors related to the recycling sector in their own exhibition hall, which will be hall number 9 for October. In total, we are expecting about 3,000 exhibitors from more than 60 nations. And the suppliers from Europe are again particularly well represented, above all from Germany, Italy, Austria, Turkey, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and France, as well as the USA. In addition, the exhibitors from Asia, for example, China, Taiwan, India, and South Korea, will particularly impress the visitors with strong performances as well. For your information, I also brought some figures from the participants of Malaysia. In 2019, we had 16 exhibitors with around 120 square meters exhibition space. And for this year's K, we have even planned a larger area at the moment with 190 square meters. The exact numbers of exhibitors have not yet been finalized. We just heard that you still able that you maybe take part within the group pavilion so that you can contact MPMA or Martrade. So the exhibitor figures for that reason is not finalized at the moment. Let's come to the hot topics of K 2022. K in Düsseldorf not only serves as a platform for forward-looking product innovations every 3 years, but also underlines its leading position by addressing the challenges of our day and age and of its industry in particular. This is reflected also by the 3 major leading themes of K 2022, which are circular economy, digitization, and climate protection. At the last edition of K 3 years ago, exhibitors already underlined the need for closed cycles along the complete material chain. Never before has the industry approached an issue in such a united manner and worked together on solutions around environmental compatibility. Since this development has picked up speed enormously, K 2022 will impressively demonstrate that the industry takes responsibility, and in future, plastics will be part of the solution rather than the problem. For sure, climate protection is the most important topic, or by far the most important topic worldwide at the moment. The time for waiting and procrastination is over, and action must be taken now. The plastics industry can and will also ask itself this existential question. It is crucial for achieving the CO2 reduction targets worldwide. In comparison with other materials, for example, the production of plastics causes little CO2 and the energy required is also lower. Plastic products also have positive properties that support climate protection, for example, during their use phase. This not only includes weight savings in packaging or avoiding food spoilage through plastic packaging. In mobility, for example, lightweight construction leads to significant fuel savings, and plastics also serve energy when it comes to building insulation. Through the active expansion of the industry's own regenerative energies, plastics can be produced in almost climate-neutral manner, as shown, for example, by the world's largest offshore wind farm from BASF in cooperation with Vattenfall. Although we are on the right track when it comes to recycling, in many parts of Europe, too, plastic still ends up in landfills or is terminally used instead of bringing it back into closed cycles. However, a circular economy is absolutely necessary in order to stop the annual global pollution of the environment with plastic waste. Especially the plastic waste must finally be recognized worldwide as an important resource for economic relevance. We just heard something in our welcome speech at the beginning of the webinar. Plastics are not waste, but valuable materials in future. For this reason, the dumping of used plastics must be stopped at a global level, and thermal recycling, for example, must be reduced. Instead, the proportion of recyclates in new plastic products must be increased. When it comes to fighting pollution effectively, recycling is definitely the way to go. Enormous progress has been made in the field of sorting and recycling processes. However, it is frightening that many plastic products still cannot be recycled in a meaningful way. For example, material mix, plastic diversity, and additives prevent recycling so far. The solution to this problem is known but still not given enough attention, so it's necessary that design for recycling is becoming more and more important. For efficient recycling, plastics products must be designed for recycling as early as the design process already starts. Let me come to another topic of the industry, which is also an enabler for example, for closing loops, which is digitization. The digital connection of the production chains must be promoted so that the processing of recyclates becomes easier to handle. In addition, the production of digital product passes is necessary, because in order to achieve a real circular economy for plastic packaging, a traceability standard is required. This product passport must be accessible at the end of the life cycle by marking it on the product. This allows waste sorting facilities to identify fully recyclable packaging. At the end, sorted fractions within the recycling process are the key to obtaining high-quality recyclates for real recycling and to reuse them. But the innovation of this dynamic industry is not only in the area of recycling. There have been tremendous developments also in other fields. The plastic industry, as a relatively young sector, has repeatedly demonstrated its innovative spirit in recent years. Optimizations and new processes have made it possible to achieve even higher performance levels. In blow film technology, for example, thinner and thinner products can be manufactured using new and innovative blow film processes. And these innovative technologies will remain driver for further developments. But let's get back to the show K itself. All these hot topics I was just talking about will be the focus in our official specials at K 2022. First and foremost, the official special show with the title Plastics Shape the Future in Hall number 6. This presentation is jointly organized by Plastics Europe Germany and Messe Düsseldorf. This format will present panel discussions and lectures where industry experts will show how plastics can shape a sustainable future or which developments are already emerging today. The Science Campus stands again for the dialogue between research and business. Here, not only visitors, but also our exhibitors have the opportunity to get an overview of scientific activities and findings in the plastics and rubber industry, and can also exchange experiences between universities and companies. Our premiere, or very new for K 2022, we have our new Circular Economy Forum, which can be found in our special area in the open fairground. In this area, we are having 13 companies from the VDMA, which is our German Engineering Federation, and they will make the circular economy topic tangible, and they will showcase this topic in its entirety. The central point of contact for rubber and elastomers will again be the Rubber Street in Hall number 6. This has been a fixture of the show for almost 40 years now and serves to increase the visibility of the rubber industry and highlights its innovative potential. On this slide, I would like to highlight and introduce you some of our new and interactive communication features around K. First of all, our new K-Mag. We have published our own online magazine since April last year. This magazine delivers facts, news, stories, trends from the international plastics and rubber industry all year round. Secondly, K Monthly is the name of the new K newsletter we are having. The subscribers not only receive the most interesting news and stories from our K-Mag on a monthly basis, but also important information around K and K in Düsseldorf, and also for all our international trade fairs. Furthermore, our new K-Talk, which gets you in the mood for K 2022 and the hot topics of the industry. This web talk features exciting panel discussions with changing international industry experts, and it is broadcasted live via konline.com and will also be available on demand afterwards. Last but not least, I also would like to mention that our K app is already available in nearly every app store. And this K app is also including our new database. So if you want to browse some of the exhibitors are taking part, you can just download the app and also have a look. For K 2022, we will also offer our matchmaking tool. And this tool will enable targeted searches for the right contacts and offers, and will be available from August on. Coming to the end, allow me to conclude with a brief look at our city of Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf has counted among the 10 most livable cities worldwide for many years, and trade fair guests can expect a very good infrastructure in terms of communication, transport, accommodation, and also entertainment after the show. Let me sum up. K 2022 will showcase the plastics and rubber industry is undergoing a transformation process. The plastics industry is aware of its current leading role as in social terms, and also with associated responsibility in terms of climate change, for example. And plastics are a key part of the solution rather than the problem. The industry and our exhibitors are highly motivated to show this at their world leading platform, K in Düsseldorf. So there will be a lot to see for everyone here in October, and you shouldn't miss being part of this event. Therefore, we are looking forward to finally welcome everyone here back in Düsseldorf for K 2022 from the 19th to the 26th of October. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm also free to answer any questions you may have at the moment, or if there are any questions in the chat.
So far, everyone has been very, what do you call it, quiet. But I'm sure there are some questions, burning questions, I'm sure. One is MPMA organizing a delegation? Yes, they are. The official trade fair package has already been sent over to MPMA. So any one of you who are interested to join the MPMA delegation is more than welcome to message Darshini, Francis, or anyone who is within MPMA. Now, Thomas, I have a question. Everybody asks how can they book accommodation if they're going on their own? What kind of accommodation is now available, given the fact that the pandemic has kind of closed some hotels? So what options are available and how can they go about doing it?
For sure, the pandemic also hits the hotels here in Düsseldorf as well. But for sure, all the hotels are still open. I know that maybe some smaller hotels have closed, but for sure we have on K Online. You will also find some information to find hotels here in Düsseldorf or in the environment around. And there's also another solution we are offering from Messe Düsseldorf, because we know that the prices are also very high, that we also have the possibility of offering hotel ships here close to the fairground. So if you want to visit the show and you're looking for accommodation, you can also have a look on our webpage. There you will find some more contacts also to book a hotel or maybe a room at a hotel ship, which is very close to the fairground. So if you book, for example, one of these rooms at the ship, sometimes you don't need a car or a taxi to get to the fairground. It's just a walk by like 5 minutes or something like that. So this is also very easy and maybe a more inexpensive solution.
Great. Okay, so anybody, one of you want to stay on a cruise ship per se during K, you can then proceed in going to K's website and finding out a little bit more on how you can actually stay on a cruise while going for an exhibition. What to call it? I know there's a lot of other questions in everybody's mind. Okay, what about coronavirus? What about the restrictions entering the exhibition? I know, Thomas, you also asked me about that and how is it affecting Malaysian companies? Just in case any one of you have that burning question. Good. There is a question from your experience. What are the quality of exhibitors that would do well at the event, and how do they fully utilize their participation? Since there are a lot of options offered, it can be overwhelming. Thank you, Zohaila, for that question. Thomas, do you understand? What do they mean by it? What are the quality of exhibitors that would do well at the event?
So
I'll break it down for you.
Yeah. So I already mentioned that because I also see in the question it's overwhelming. The participant is telling. For that reason, we try to make it as easy as possible for our visitors, and we try to structure the show so that it's easy to find your way, to find the right contacts and companies you would like to visit. And if you're looking really for raw materials or more for the technology part, you can get your orientation. We also offer our online database, and there you can also log in and you can prepare your visit and see what are the qualities of our exhibitors, what are their main area of presentation for the show. So if you maybe browse before or have a look on our web page before and look through our exhibitor database, you can also prepare yourself by doing your own route or map by what kind of exhibitors you would like to see during the show. So that makes it more efficient for you if you prepare in advance. So this is something I would also recommend. If you plan to visit K, have a look, try to find out what exhibitors are interesting for you. You can just tick them and save them in a visitor list, which is individual for you. And then you also find a hall plan with all the destinations of all the exhibitors. So this is also one of our services free of charge for all the visitors preparing in advance.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Now there was a question earlier. Okay. Someone else has asked for hot topics, circular economy and others. If we could not attend physically, will it have live online stream via the K app or others?
It's not planned to do it via the app, but for sure via our webpage, K Online. As I already mentioned, we have our official specials like the special show in hall number 6 and also our circular economy forum. In the forum, we also plan to have short presentations, for example. And if we have these presentations, we also plan to have somehow live streams or something in the internet. So if someone cannot attend physically, they for sure can also have a look if it's not a live stream, the videos will definitely also be available at K Online afterwards on demand.
Great, thank you, Thomas. There's another one. Are there any awards for exhibitors?
What kind of awards you're thinking of? Like
Best presentation, I would imagine.
Okay, so there are no awards or presentation awards or something planned so far. So I know that we have some associations and they also do some award things during the show because they use the platform for it, but it's nothing planned from us as the organizer because the association's normally planning to do this.
All right, okay, so it comes from the association themselves.
Yeah.
Now, the person Perk has asked about what kind of exhibition would be good for him since he's doing plastic disposable glove manufacturing. Your show is actually more Interpack based. So because you're handling likely to do with disposable gloves, in this case, plastics, and that would usually be more for the food handling side, if I'm not mistaken. So Interpack would be a little bit more up your alley. However, K-Fair would be the location for you to source for your machinery to actually make those gloves. So that might be what you might be looking for, but any further questions on that, you can always ping me on the chat, or at least I think Darshini from MPNA would be able to share my contact details as well. All right. Okay, going back to travel restrictions, there are none whatsoever at this point in time. The Association for German Trade Fair Organizers have actually announced that anyone and everyone is welcome to come to Germany for an exhibition. Unlike last year, where there was a limitation to 5 days for those who were vaccinated with Sinovac, now there is no longer a duration prohibition. Okay, so anyone and everyone is more than welcome. You are just required to make sure you have a negative test or proof that you are vaccinated or you have been infected. Of course, all three would be great, but if you don't have any of the three and only have one, you are more than welcome to come to K. Just make sure you book your flights and your accommodation in good time. Don't wait till the last moment, because then you'll probably be paying a lot of money. All right. Thank you, Thomas, for the sharing. And I am sure you are awaiting a lot more information. Mr. Bala Murugan says that he has attended K 2019 and very useful. We have developed biodegradable sanitary napkins. Fantastic, Mr. Bala. I am glad that you have been able to find K to be a very beneficial platform. Now, without further ado, we will bring on Mr. S. Jai Shankar, who is the Sustainability Lead and Director of Oil and Gas, Chemicals, Energy, and Raw Materials. He is from Martrade and the person behind the pavilion. So if you have burning questions, I suggest you wait till the very end. Mr. Murugan, please make sure that you do not do any marketing at this point in time. It is part of the webinar etiquette at this. All right. But if you have any questions, do direct them to MPMA. So without further ado, let me bring on Mr. S. Jai Shankar, who has a lot of experience with what K is all about. Over to you, Jai.
Thank you very much, Lydin. A very good afternoon. By the way, Lydin, you're very polished in the way you present things. Wonderful to hear you. Anyway, very good afternoon, Mr. CC Chia, Vice President, Malaysia Plastic Manufacturers Association. Lydin, of course, Sir Thomas Franken from Massachusetts, fellow speakers, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, thank you to MPMA for this opportunity given to Martrade to say a few words in regards to our stand in relation to sustainability, and of course to showcase our support to not only the plastic industry but also for K Fair. Let me set this up very quickly. As mentioned just now by Ms. Lylin, I've had the privilege of getting involved with K Fair, 2 editions at least, and I can echo what Thomas was saying. It is one of those trade fairs that myself, when I was a trade commissioner in Germany, never had issues about companies coming back very satisfied. So it is truly one of those trade fairs that delivers what it usually promises. Anyway, in regards to presentation, I've got about 20 minutes. I've got 30 slides. I don't intend to, spend too much on each of the slides, but just to give you a broad overview on how we see sustainability and in relation to exports. Yeah, first, very quickly, I thought, a quick overview of the plastic supply chain. It's very integrated, it's very widespread, it's very diverse, and it's also very important to the Malaysian economy. In terms of where it goes, in terms of where it supplies, packaging constitutes about 46% of the plastic industry. E&E is 30%, that's a big chunk of it. And then after which you have automotive, construction, household, and agriculture related plastics. As a whole, the industry is something like 58 billion ringgit worth for the local economy. So it's a huge, huge part of the Malaysian economy. Here, it'll give you a quick snapshot on how much it contributes in terms of GDP, as well as employment and turnover. But what was very instructive, as Mr. C.C. Chia pointed out just now, are the export numbers. It's a huge contributor, and it is performing exceedingly well. Despite all the geopolitical tensions and issues with pandemic and so on, last year was a stellar year for the industry, and we sincerely hope that it'll continue to do so, and participation in KFAIR could hopefully make the difference. So these are the numbers, all positive. There were a bit dip, it's a small dip in 2020, understandably. Then it sort of bounced back very strongly, and we do think that moving forward for the next 5 years at least, we're going to see a very strong growth in terms of production as well as export numbers, despite all the naysayers. Plastic, as with oil and gas, potentially is probably not a sunset industry just yet. Now, so the question then is, while we are clearly doing quite well, can we maintain strong export growth? If we don't ever act together, this might not be the case. And in the past, from where we come from, Madrid has 46 offices. When we speak to our trade commissioners worldwide, this is what they say, and this is a general trend that I think all of us sort of have to accept. In the past, we used to go and compete in global markets in the context of price and quality. Today, there's this third variable that is very much in play in terms of the buyer's decision making, which is sustainability. It comes with many different words and terminology. In some cases, ESG, but broadly speaking, every exporter needs to take this issue seriously, as rightfully pointed out by Mr. C.C. Chia and Thomas as well just now. Now, why so? For those who are maybe still skeptical, because we do meet a lot of SMEs who feel, they do have a bit of time, something, I have at least about 5 years to 10 years to make that change. Martin is here to tell you that's not going to be the case. You barely have, I think, from our look, the way we look at it, you barely have maybe 2+ years to make a change, a very quick change in terms of adapting sustainable practices. Either, it could be on an organizational level, or it could be on a product level. Plastic in itself is struggling, in terms of looking into its carbon footprint, but as mentioned just now, it can evolve. More importantly, plastic itself, it's not something that is bad. Yeah, it's plastic waste that is the issue, and not plastic itself. Plastic is also pointed out, has very little energy use. I think it uses only about 4%. So the product itself, I think rightfully have got ad branding, so to speak, unfortunately, but that is something, a concerted effort by the industry and the government to educate a lot of consumers on how it needs to be seen. But concurrently, a lot of effort needs to be done by the industry as well in order to address perhaps some real problems in terms of managing the product, how it's sort of evolving, and some of the innovations involved. But here, the pressure is on 3 levels. Yeah, one, international policies. Governments across the world have gone out there and signed a lot of deals. It could be deals or an agreement that is being done on a United Nations level, or it could be a deal that is done on a trade agreement level, FTAs and so on. Then you have stakeholder pressures, and then you have rising consumer expectations. Now, in terms of international policies, as mentioned just now, I think most of us have heard about the Paris Agreement, the 2030 Agenda, and the 17 SDGs. Now, 17 SDGs, if you're finding it a bit difficult to understand SDGs, ESDs, and so on, now the SDGs are very government to government, very high level policies, targets to achieve on a government level. But it's the private sector that's going to move the agenda. And for the private sector, the conceptual framework would be ESD, the environment aspects of it, of the social aspects of it, and the governance aspect of it. So collectively, if you get the ESG framework right, then you're probably in a good space in terms of addressing the concerns of your importers or your buyers in regards to your adherence to sustainable practices. Now, a bit of news flash here. The UN a few days ago agreed to start negotiating a world's first global treaty on plastic pollution. Nearly 200 nations agreed to negotiate and finalize a legally binding plastic treaty by 2024. Now, whether it will happen in 2024 or it will get deferred and happen some other time, it's a moot point. What is important to note is that there is a sense of urgency for the first time among many countries in regards to how do you manage plastics. Yeah, I think the biggest fear, at least on our end, and I'm sure from the industry's end as well, the fear could drown out the logic of having the industry in place. So collectively, we cannot ignore the fears. What we need to do is be very proactive in addressing those fears by taking initiatives on our end. And I think KFAIR, as Thomas pointed out, I think is addressing some of the core possible initiatives that I think the industry has to take in terms of addressing these so-called fear by many policymakers, many consumers, many stakeholders, and that ranges from innovation to digitalization and so on. And now I mentioned a bit about trade agreements. For example, if you look at CPTPP, which is basically pushed by the United States to bring together countries in the Pacific Rim to come together. If you notice, there is at least 2 chapters there in regards to labor and environment, i.e. Those are related to ESG. Similarly with EU, if you look at deals done with EU, and Malaysia has been trying to do an FTA with EU for some time now, and we'll continue in that discussion. Since EU's first free trade agreement in Asia with South Korea in 2009, it has consistently included what we call the TSD, Trade and Sustainable Development chapters, encompassing issues such as environment, labor rights, climate change, and so on. Here, I'm trying to address a very broad perspective of sustainability, because, though we are, it's from the plastic industry, it doesn't mean it's an issue only about the product and the wastage of the product, or how do you dispose of the product. Yeah, I think we have to look this on a very holistic way. There are a lot of other aspects of sustainability that we need to also focus on, so that the industry addresses these issues in a way that is acceptable by the global business community. And essentially, this is the case. And we find these not only with the plastic sector, but for example, with the rubber glove, with palm oil, and a whole bunch of other sectors, is that we got to start looking at the global value chain, and you got to look at your value chain. So for the buyers, the importers, the MNCs who are purchasing the plastic goods, they are basically forced to look at the whole value chain. Yeah, and so if you are sitting in any part of the value chain, you need to be able to demonstrate sound environmental and social standards. Yeah, and this is reflected with a lot of coming together of very large buyers, usually MNCs, who are putting their visions together in these sort of alliances. For example, you have the Responsible Business Alliance, which is the world's largest industry coalition, and they're pushing for greening of the global supply chain, and they have all the big boys there. Inevitably, many of your products are going to end up with these MNCs, which are larger companies. And so you cannot ignore it. And more so, as mentioned earlier, the window of opportunity is exceedingly small. But on the other hand, the way to look at it as well, it's not the window are closing, but the windows are actually opening up, because if you start putting efforts into sustainable practices, guess what? You now stand in a better opportunity to actually be competitive in areas where perhaps in the past you were not. The majority of Fortune 500 companies, and these include bankers. I'm stressing on the fact that it includes bankers because sometimes we tend to forget this. In fact, your biggest pressure for us, the way we look at things, is that probably will come from bankers. If the bankers start looking into trade financing, for example, I remember 5-6 years ago, Commerzbank, one of the largest banks in Germany, were already looking into trade financing that it's supposed to be sustainable. For companies, sustainable practices, they do your trade financing and so on. Yeah, Walmart, one of the biggest companies in the world, they've gone into projects such as Project Gigaton, looking at suppliers so that they're looking their greenhouse footprint, to lower their greenhouse footprint. And because you're part of the value chain, and clearly they expect a similar commitment from your end as well. So here are just some numbers. I'm not going to sort of belabor too much about it, but in principle, the consumers are also pushing for it. So not only you see an impact, a push from the policymakers, from the stakeholders, bankers, but also from the consumers. And clearly, in an era where social media is a very powerful tool, the possibility of feedback from consumers to producers can be swift and can be brutal. Yeah. So this is something that we really need to be sensitive about. Yeah. And what it will allow you to be is that, gives you better access and create stronger demand for your products and services. Again, I'm trying to look at the whole proposition on two sides. In life, is always a yin and yang proposition. So I think if we see it wrongly, if we see this as a problem, we should instead see this as an absolute opportunity. Because anybody who make a transformation onto their practices, onto their supply chain, and the way they do their business, and how they engineer their design and innovation, are going to be there in terms of being able to get the best in terms of market access, demand, and being at the forefront of being the best supplier for your principles. Yeah. A bit on Malaysia and sustainability, just to give you an idea where Malaysia sits in terms of its sustainability agenda. There is a huge amount of commitment given by the government. At the highest level, you have the National SDG Council, which our Prime Minister chairs, and then you have a lot of steering committees and stuff like that. And a lot of the blueprints that's been delivered by the Malaysian government encompass quite a big, significant amount of sustainability sort of initiatives in these documents. So you're going to see a lot of push for sustainable practices across different industries, and bearing in mind plastic is a sector that is cross-cutting across various different industries. So a lot of it will also impact many of y'all. Yeah, this is just to give you an idea how widespread the support is. Martrade and sustainability on our end, what we do is that we focus on two aspects of it. For those who are maybe not too familiar with Martrade, we look at exporters development. We take care of exporters and see how we build on their capacity, we strengthen their capacity, and then we look at how we grow trade. From a sustainable point of view, we have got two major initiatives that maybe you all should be aware of. One is Sustainability Action Values for Exporters. It's an initiative that Ms. Zohaila, who's our current trade commissioner in Frankfurt, and today who's in attendance here, was a big part of it. It was launched in 2019, where we try to address issues on an industry level. So if any of y'all, be it MPMA or individual companies, if there are concerns and issues and things that you want to raise in regards to sustainability, this is one possible platform that you might want to reach out to. The other one's the National Trade Blueprint. We have a very strong thrust in terms of supporting the sustainability and innovation agenda. I'm going to skip this. I've already touched on this just now. But here, just to note that we have 46, Madrid has 46 international offices, and these offices not only helps us to market products, but gives us also a lot of market information on the demand profile of the buyers. And we can tell you that increasingly the buyers are looking at green footprint. The green footprint can either be your process, can be your product, or can be on an organizational level, but whichever way it is, there has to be something that we can talk about to the potential buyers. Now, there was some question just now about what Madrid offers in terms of incentives and so on. Here, I'm going to quickly run through some of the big ones that we have. Then if you need further information, you can go to the website, or you can obviously reach out to our team. Yeah, so there's one on e-commerce, even including B2B sort of platforms. You have what is called the market development grant. Here could be very relevant. This particular grant is very relevant if you are intending to participate in K-Fair. You do get up to about 300,000 per company per lifetime, where you can defray your costs in terms of your flight and your lodging. Yeah, so definitely if you're participating in K-Fair, this is something that could be relevant to you. Then if you are a services company, we have something called Services Export Fund. And then separately, what Madrid also does, it looks at different profiles of exporters, and it does what we call hand-holding, very specialized, customized programs to support you, including through this program, you can actually participate in KFAir as well. So you have what we call a mid-tier company, MPCDP, which is basically a program that covers mid-tier companies. Then you have what we call the BWYEDP program, which is specifically for Buputra community, women, youth exporters. So for example, if you're a woman exporter, that means you own the company, 60% Malaysian, then you can potentially come under this particular program and get yourself funded, and where you can also participate in KFAir through this particular mechanism. Similarly, you have something called Exceed SME Exporters Development. We have a big Buputra initiative for globalization under Teraju, but where Madrid is involved. So in other words, though, a lot of these programs, the lead agencies are other agencies, not Madrid, but Madrid is always at the focal point. In many of it, we collaborate with many of these agencies, so you can always come back to us, and we can be this one-stop center to facilitate. And through all these programs, you have possibilities of you participating in KFAir. Yeah. Just going to run through this very quickly again. So just take note of this. We will be able to share those slides later on. And from there, we can have a further conversation on that. Now, just to a bit, quick touch on what Madrid did for the Malaysian Pavilion at KFAir 2019. Very interestingly enough, that edition, what we decided was we wanted to have a very strong emphasis on sustainability and green elements. So 2019 was one of the first time that Madrid's pavilion showcased everything from a green perspective. In fact, I remember the press release that we did. It was basically saying that every company that was an exhibitor in the pavilion had a green footprint, either the product or from a company perspective or a process perspective. And we expect to do similarly for 2022. So in regards to 2019, just to give you a perspective on how successful it was, there were about 12 companies under our pavilion specifically. There were others who were out of our pavilion. I'm sure they were successful as well. So the companies who were under our pavilion, we had about 367 business meetings. We received about 976 business inquiries from 72 international buyers. And we expect similar success for KFAir 2022. As mentioned just now by Thomas, there's a focal point, it seems Chair mentioned as well. So please reach out to us if you are hoping to participate in KFAir and if you want to be part of the Malaysian National Pavilion. Just to touch, if you are part of the pavilion, Madrid basically provides or subsidizes that participation. So moving forward very quickly, I think it's the last two slides. Just want to touch on these two slides. One is that what is the benefit ultimately if you ask as an exporter? Now the benefit is three. Yeah, it's basically provides you with market access. It opens up doors if you have a green footprint. It builds up your brand and collectively, of course, Malaysia's brand as well. because we, in the long run, we want to be seen as part of an industry that is responsible, part of an industry that is innovative, part of an industry that knows that is a global company. Because often enough, a lot of Malaysian companies, they might be a big company, mind you, but they don't have a global mindset. And if you're participating in an event like K-Fair and so on, you're hitting the global marketplace. And when you do that, you got to hit by global standards. Yeah, so hopefully over time, the Malaysian brand will grow along with that. And of course, innovation. Yeah, sustainability is not doable without innovation. So as a final note, all I want to say is that, because whenever we speak to companies, they always talk about survivability, and they tell us, what, at this point in time, seriously, I cannot afford to spend or invest on sustainability. So for us, it is not survivability versus sustainability, rather it is sustainability equates to survivability. If you do not go in and take the journey on sustainability, you might just not survive. With that, I'd like to end and say thank you. And yeah, if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take. If not, we can take it up later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jai. That was a very insightful presentation. I'm sure a lot of you have questions. There was one in the chat, I believe here. Any guidelines or references on ESG standard, such as ISO? Jay, maybe you have an inkling on that one?
They can basically speak to us, but just to give you perspective, I think at last count, there was something like 400 sustainability related certifications out there. So as a point of note is this, you can have industry certs, those are mandatory, right? So whatever the industry requires, say RSPO, FSC, or very specifically to any industry, you got to do that, right? Then above and beyond that, it becomes a bit more cloudy in the kind of what you require to prove yourself to be sustainable. In some cases, for example, if you talk to some of the big four audit firms, they are focusing on your carbon footprint, right? So to do a calculation, say how's your carbon footprint like. But in some other cases, they say, look, why don't you take up a certification, right? And those are very broad-based certification. The struggle today is that there isn't one centralized entity to say that this is green and this is not, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think it's still a journey, but ultimately, if something has to be done, and if you just start on it from there onwards, I think the industry expectations will guide you, your buyers' expectations will guide you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jay. So there's a question or two from Mr. Ben Ong. So first question from Ben was he would like a copy of your slides, and if that's possible, of course.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, the second one is, how can circular economy be a sustainable core for, say, an SME plastic recycling company? I believe this question can actually be directed to the next one that is coming up, which is the panel. So Ben, I ask for your kind patience because the next segment will definitely be very thought-riveting, where Jay is also going to be part of that panel. If there are no other questions, I hope that we can now go on to the next segment. So thank you, Jay, again for the great sharing earlier. Any one of you who are still interested to be part of the Madrid Pavilion, do not be afraid. You can contact Jay or you can contact Hussein, who is in the chat. You can, he has posted quite a few things, in fact. Both of them would be able to give you a little bit more heads up what is still available for the Malaysian Pavilion at K. And Hussein has actually answered Ben. So in this case, make sure that you actually message Jay if you have anything, including Hussein. There are a lot of Madrid representatives, in fact, in the audience today. So just make sure that if you have any questions with regards to the MDG grant or any of the grants that has been presented today, as well as that of the others, we'd be more than happy to help you in answering them. Now, without further ado, let's go on to the next segment. Thank you, Jay, for sharing your screen. And we will now bring up Mr. Sharizal Sharani. He is your resident moderator I think. And Sharizal, thank you very much for agreeing to be our moderator today. And he is the CEO, co-founder of Zero Hunger Sundiran Berhad. If you have any questions what Zero Hunger actually does, you may actually ask him. But he is here today to actually moderate a very interesting set of panels. You can see Mr. Jai is still up here because it's part of the panel, but I now welcome again Mr. CC Chia, the Vice President of MPMA. We also welcome two more individuals. One is Mr. David Ang. He is the General Manager of Dongguan Industries Berhad. He comes with much experience and represents the fourth generation of the Ang family. And Dongguan has been in business for so many years already right now, I think, David? And of course, without further ado, we also welcome Mr. Jeff King. So Jeff is the CEO of the Food Purveyor. So if you've seen Village Grocer, Ben's Independent Grocer, BSC Fine Foods, and Leisure Grocer across the nation, you know who's the responsible person behind the drivers and the key messaging that he has. And if you want to complain why there are no plastic bags, you can always speak to Jeff. Over to you guys. And Sharizal, you take it away.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Good afternoon. Selamat petang and salam sejahtera. And I guess it's still good afternoon in Germany. Welcome to the roundtable discussion in conjunction with the Cape Fair on circular economy, shaping the industry for global competitiveness. Our discussions today will be centered around the topic of factors shaping the circular economy, perspectives, adoption, and society. I want to get straight into the discussion. I want to bring Jeff as our first panel speaker to look at his perspective on circular economy coming from the grocery industry. And of course, I would imagine a primary, a strong buyer of products of plastics, and share us with some insights of what he has experimented with over the last few years. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you, Sharizal. Yeah, and welcome everyone, and good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Jeff King, and as it's been mentioned, I'm the CEO of the Food Purveyor, and we're a chain of supermarkets across Malaysia, principally around Klang Valley, Johor, and Penang. And in 2020, me and the team sat down and was reacting to what was going on in the world and the discussions around plastic, and said, we have to do something, and we need to accelerate and demonstrate as a leader that we can make some changes and hopefully be a catalyst for change in the country. And so we embarked on a campaign called Plastic Free by 2023. And really the idea was to eliminate all single-use plastics that we were adding to our retail operations. And we've been going about that. And we're now 2 years into that. It's a lot of that was driven by consumer expectation. We've got a lot of feedback saying your store has too much plastic around the products. What can you do about it? And we've really led the charge. I think I'll just share, we've just published our 2021 report card on how we're doing. So we're 2 years into this 4-year program. And in that time, we've reduced the shrink wrap that we put around fruit and vegetables by about 50%. So we were protecting these products very, very intensely. And now we let them go, we let them breathe and show on their own. Actually, it shows that customers really like that. Our sales have gone up on the fruit and vegetables, and actually wastage has come down. So that's been a very good benefit there. On bakery products, we've actually eliminated 80% of the plastic that we've used in bakery selling. We used to wrap up every single bun in a plastic bag with a price ticket on it, and now we allow customers to collect and put it into one bag, often paper. So that's a big achievement. But the biggest achievement we've done and really stuck our neck out on is on carrier bags. On carrier bags, you know, the government have a tax of 20 cents if you use a carrier bag. We actually did the opposite. We gave customers 20 cents if they brought their own bag in. Very dramatic way of trying to incentivize customers to change their behaviors and side with with our campaign to try and eliminate these plastic bags. Over a period of time, they got used to that, and we actually then started enforcing no plastic bags, no single-use plastic bags. And today we've actually managed to switch off plastic bag in all our chains. So some people like it, some people accept it, others may grumble, but it's something we've done. We started that process. We were the leader in Malaysia to do that. Other chains have dabbled and followed subsequently, but there's no major mass take-up on it. So you know, one of the questions I get asked internally as well as by customers is, you know, why are you doing that? And I can go to your competitor and get plastic bags. So, you know, why are you doing that? But I think it is the right thing. You know, I think Jay mentioned, you know, the clock is ticking and we have to do things. It's no point debating and waiting for somebody else or the rules to change. We've all got to make a stance and do something. So we've done that. We've actually saved 27 million plastic bags a year from going into the society. And that's a major achievement. You know, that actually demonstrates the scale of what we were adding into society, into Malaysian consumer society, and where that was going. We could see them turning up in rubbish tips and rivers and stuff. And actually, what we've replaced it with is reuse bags. So customers can bring their bags, and we provide some of those. And a lot of those are actually used from recycled plastic. So it's a really nice story where we got rid of single use and replaced it with recycled plastic that can be used for a reuse solution to the problem. We've been recognised by the Ministry of Environment, Qatar, for our achievements and leading the charge on this. And we're further exploring other packaging reduction solutions and changeovers. We've banned or stopped selling single-use knives and forks and bowls and plates and stuff that are used for kanduris and stuff. So you know, we've got recyclable or biodegradable alternatives for those uses. And we've also introduced some zero refill stations into our store where customers can actually bring their own packaging and collect the product, put it in, get it weighed, and take it home without adding any extra packaging. So we're experimenting all the time. We're grateful for all the suppliers that we've engaged with. A lot of the farmers and the food packaging suppliers have you know, accepted our challenges, and we've looked at different solutions for grapes, putting it in paper bags or whatever. Looked at, we've got boxes where we've got green beans and tomatoes and stuff in it. We've experimented with brown paper around coriander and onions and stuff just to sort of reduce the packaging. And some of it works, some of it doesn't work. Some of it introduces cost into the equation. Some of it actually harms the quality of the product. So we are constantly exploring and experimenting with solutions to do this. So, you know, we would love a bit more government push to regulate and to get others to follow, because we do sometimes feel we're sticking our neck out. We would love a bit of clarity around the halal situation with regards to recycled packaging, and that's an area that you know, it's still under a sort of a cloud of debate, and those sort of things may break and slow down the sort of adoption of recycled packaging in the country. So I think that's mostly it for me. But you know, reiterate, the clock is ticking. Everyone has to do something, and the moment for action is now. Is our belief.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And you're right. Personally, I think the clock has ticked a long time ago, and perhaps now it's a little too late. But I think for most of us who are optimistic, a good time is to start, you know, whenever we're most comfortable. And on that, I like to bring David onto the stage. You know, he's come from a family-owned business that span, you know, generations now in plastic manufacturing. It'd be very interesting to hear his insight on his journey from a less sustainable type of product offerings to a more sustainable type of product offerings, and also operations. David, maybe you could share some insights, and I guess what incentivized you for the company to be in this journey?
Well, Chongguan started in 1942, officially plastics around 1960s. So we have been polluting the environment for 60 years. No, that was a joke. But, you know, on a serious note, we actually launched a Leaf Green program last year, 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, because we see a surge in, you know, the use of plastics. So what we do is that under the Leaf Green program, there are actually 3 pillars. First is the recycling side. What we have done is that we increased the recycling in the factory and also in the content of the finished product. We hear from our UK customers, they are saying that, you know, by 1st of April, if there's any plastics which contain 30%, less than 30% recycle, it will be taxed £200, British pounds per ton. So what we have done is that we accelerate the process. And part of that, we launched a series, what we call a loop closes. So what we have done is that essentially we collect waste from our customers. We started that, some we can reuse, some we cannot reuse, but we collect them, reprocess them, and try to put them into our products. And then secondly, we started internally. We collect our waste internally here instead of sending them to a recycler. We recycle them internally. And then next, we got a question from our customers. How can we are sure that the product is 30% recycled? How can we know that, you know, you are using proper recycling process? So then we get certification from ISCC Plus and GRS. It is actually, you know, issued by the certification is issued by a company in Germany called Control Union, based in headquarters in Berlin. So we got that a couple of weeks ago. I think it was four or 6 weeks ago. So that took us quite long. That certification took us about 6 months to get certified. And then we did explore bio-based and compostable, like Jeff said. But what we have, you know, we face headwind in that segment. Part of the Live Green program is that the cost is high. You know, for bio-based compostable, you're talking about 4 times more. So what we intend to do going forward is to increase, you know, the recycled content in our products. We will continue to market that. But one of the headwinds that we encounter is that, okay, you know, my customer tells me that, David, you increase your recycled content of your product. How does it make it safe? Because, you know, by increasing the recycled content, does it make your product unsafe? So, I mean, we are in the tertiary packaging business, right? So what we do is that we use Newton Lab. It is a dynamic simulation lab. So they simulate our stretch, you know, from point A to point B. How do you wrap it? Whether you are putting too much plastics, whether you are putting not enough plastics. So from that, you know, we help our customers to optimize their packaging and reduce their damage. So, you know, in Europe, generally, you know, 4% of goods transport on the roads are damaged. So the figures are high. And what about in Asia? What about in Malaysia? So we use that lab. We partner with the lab, you know, to make sure that our products is safe, you know, especially our loop closes series. And yes, we are very, very much passionate about the circular economy. We are very passionate about recycling, you know, promoting sustainability. And, you know, we look forward to work with government bodies, you know, associations, brand owners to increase the recyclability of products, you know, the recycled content of products, and to make sure that these are all done, you know, in a safe manner. And ultimately, you know, we want to reduce waste in the environment, right?
Thanks, David. That's very interesting, and thank you for sharing that journey. The next, I'd like to ask CC Chia, you know, from the perspective of the industry. You mentioned about how the plastics industry in Malaysia is about 52 billion ringgit worth. You know, I'm wondering how many % of that is actually within the framework of a circular economy or more sustainable type of product, and what are the challenges for SMEs, or as Jay rightly said, the opportunities for them to bring themselves up the value chain? What is it that's missing even? Chia, CC, what are your thoughts?
Oh, thank you very much, Charizal, for that question. I think it is. I don't think we have official data on this in terms of percentage of you know, the plastic sectors that is classify as sustainable or anything like that. But I can say that we are moving towards that. I think the whole plastic sector, not only in Malaysia but globally, we realize the issue, and we are moving towards the goal of being more sustainable. But I would like to highlight that plastic, when we talk about plastic sustainability as presented by Mr. Shankar earlier, the issue is not about carbon footprint. I mean, plastics has proven to be the solution when you talk about carbon footprint. If you were to, like, in Jagro survey, if you switch to paper packaging, in fact, it has proven that the carbon footprint of paper packaging is much heavier than plastic. So when you switch to alternative material, you have to look into the whole LCA, the life cycle assessment on what is the carbon footprint, because today you may be solving the disposal issue, but you are creating a climate change issue. And if you look into the what you call the I think for Malaysia, what we need to look into is to achieve sustainability, is to address the real issue. The real issue is plastic is leaking into the environment. And why does it happen is because we don't have a good enough waste management system. All right, our waste management system is broken. It is very broken. It has not improved, even though the act has in place since for more than 10 years. It's just it's not moving anywhere. So I'm very happy to hear from Shankar's presentation that the Malaysian government is committed to be supporting the Malaysian businesses to be more sustainable, because that's what customers look for. So I think what we are looking for is that we, on the Union 5, where they talk about a global agreement, a binding agreement. I think the industry would like to see the binding agreement on waste management, setting a global recycling target, for Malaysia. Let's say by 2030 or 2040, we have to achieve a recycling rate of, let's say, 50%. Let's set that goal, just like climate change, and let's improve our waste management system, and let's move towards there. Of course, the plastic sector supports, reuse. Reuse is a good thing, making durable plastic products or any kind of packaging that can be reused. It is a very noble concept. It has to be, reduce, reuse, recycle in that order. So if you can reuse, definitely is good. But to use alternative material, I think you have to also look into the life cycle, the carbon footprint, last but not least, I think for supermarkets or any of the food outlets, the other thing that you need to look into is food safety and food wastage. I think plastic has proven to contribute very significantly on those two aspects. Right.
Thank you, CC.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. There's some valid points that you raised here, and I like to get Jay to comment. This debate, this continuing argument, carbon footprint versus life cycle, and I think a big part of that is actually how the end consumers actually behaves when they treat plastics, right? And someone mentioned earlier, the biggest problem with plastics is actually the waste that consumers produce from waste. So where do we draw this line? There's a strong request from retailers for stronger regulation, laws even, and that then can guide manufacturers. But we do, if you look at across our supply chains, especially retail, from your pasar tani to hawker stalls, and then as you move up to F&B outlets, people have different ideas with regards to how to use plastic. How do we get our acts together, Jay?
Thanks, Sharizal. So Cici, I completely agree with you. In fact, I was thinking my last slide should be something like, we need plastics, what we don't need is plastic waste. Yeah, because I think that is the cornerstone of the whole conversation. And Sharizal, you are perfectly right. There is also a lot of noise around the conversation. And it's very difficult to pinpoint because there's so much noise and a lot of it's not evidence-based. I've had some very good conversations with my friends in MPMA, and they always, sort of, I think they go on very much on evidence-based, sort of look into the whole conversation. So, and we face these with other sectors as well. Palm oil is another sector that we sort of struggle to address. So in the case of plastic, maybe moving forward, I think one way of addressing it is, yeah, look at how you dispose of it. It's a big part of it. But at the same time, parallel look at maybe alternative material, not to plastic, but improve sort of, different kinds of maybe bioplastics and so on and so forth, so that every interest groups concerns are sort of addressed in a meaningful way. And there was one, I think Jeff was sort of mentioning, how do we move forward? And one of the things I realized there's always this gap is that there's a gap in terms of R&D, in terms of looking forward into innovations, in terms of best practices. David is doing fantastic on that front, and there are a handful of other companies, SMEs and others who are doing, but it's not snowballing, right? They are still a minority. And then on the other side of the fence, as also pointed out, I don't think so. I think there's also a lot that the sort of the government can do to sort of address the core issues such as waste collection and waste management. Some manufacturers have gone, they're doing the extended responsibility bit and trying to collect their own waste and try to, be a more integral part of a circular economy. So the pieces are rightfully missing, and it might take a bit of time for the pieces to, to be put together. So that is a concern. On the flip side of it, or at least on the bright side of it, is that knowing how industry generally operates, if there is a clear demand, it could sort of, give them the kind of support and catalyst and motivation to push and try to latch on the possible opportunity. So it is a question of trying to balance and trying to see this either as an opportunity or it's going to be a drag. But to be very fair to a lot of the SMEs industries, there are many of us, many of the companies are in the crossroad. Things are very difficult. Just last 2-3 days, you have a lot of the feedstock for the plastic manufacturers just sort of skyrocketed, right? So at one point you have issues on logistics supply base. And on the other hand, if you look at the buyer's perspective, right, a lot of them are passing the cost of adapting sustainable practices down the value chain, right? And this is a major issue. I noticed this in other subsectors as well. The full brunt of adapting sustainable practices, sometimes, it goes down to the suppliers, and they are already being squeezed as it is. Whereas the full benefit, so to speak, of adapting sustainable practices is going to the other end of this value chain. Yeah, so this mismatch too needs to be sort of addressed, so that the responsibility of managing the waste doesn't only lie with the producer, right? It has to cut across the supply chain, and there has to be a greater distribution. And if you notice in terms of price point, in terms of margins, who makes the biggest? It's the guy who's, at the end of the value chain, right? So, there's a lot of areas that you got to sort of. I know Jeff is sort of shaking his head. What I meant was the other guys, right? But at the end of the day, I think it has to be like sort of, a lot of conversation has to be taken place, and that includes the government as well. If you look at how the government has been structured along these lines, you sometimes struggle to find out who is actually responsible. yeah, on different aspects of sustainable sustainability sort of practices and conversation. In the case of market, for example, we're looking at just one end of the spectrum where the supplies are ready, the export ready, and then we're trying to latch on and try to make sense and trying to sort of, find opportunities. But then you have the whole spectrum of development work that maybe we are not there. Yeah, so it is a very complex issue. And I think the players are struggling a lot more than they should rightfully. And because of all the other aspects, issues that are currently floating, it's not an easy time for everybody.
Thanks, Jay. On that note, CC, Jay talked about how, suppliers are being squeezed, their margins being squeezed. Wouldn't it make sense if we put everybody across the supply chain in one room and try to figure it out, right? The issues that's creating the various bottlenecks at each point of the supply chain, and try to figure out a sandbox or a little pilot program looking at new maybe raw materials, different types of technology of making things. And there's a whole bunch of things you could do if you just lock people up in a room for, I don't know, a week or two, right? What are your thoughts about that? Would that something that NPMA would want to advocate to SMEs, so that SMEs then can look at locally new opportunities and also going abroad? Your thoughts, CC?
I'm not not sure I understand that question.
So essentially, if I could rephrase,
yeah,
let's put the industry in a lab and look at the various breaking points in the supply chain, so that we can then experiment, do a little project to see, what are the areas of focus that we want to experiment with, and get government to support.
In terms of sustainability?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. I think in a way the industry is already in some sort of sandbox. We have been communicating globally with the plastic sectors within ASEAN, with America, with Europe, with Japan, and others. So we share our problems and we share ideas on how to resolve it. So I would like to say that the industry has put in some efforts to address this. One of it is to design for recycling. More and more products are being designed for recycling outright with the intention to be recycled. There are already products that means it's moving towards a mono material. That means if you have a product, let's say a shampoo bottle that is made of PE, then the cap is made of PP, and there's aluminum and all this, and labels is paper. So the trend is moving to it using only one material. All right, and then there's other kind of food packaging that is maybe they have a PE layer, a nylon layer, a PP layer. Yeah, the trend is also moving towards using mono material, so single material. So because when you have two, three, or four different kind of materials, it is impossible to recycle, and therefore you got to dispose it. All right. So when you shift towards a single material, it can be then collected for recycling. The second thing is that the recycled content. I think David already mentioned that the customers are already driving for the use of more recycled material. If you don't have those days, if you use recycled material, they would not want to buy from you. Now is that if you don't use recycled material, they won't buy from you. It's the other way around. So customers are already asking for 20%, 30%. And I can see this as only is gonna go up. So there's a lot of plastic companies, they are already, or even brand owners, they are already designed their product based on 100% recycled material. For example, you can be buying this jar, biscuit jar that is made of 100% rPET. That means recycled PET. Same thing for PP, or So that is what the industry is doing, to increase recycled content, designing product that is can be more easily recycled.
Thanks, CC. I just want to get David to weigh in this comment by Zuhaila Siddiq. She's saying that companies do want to change, but the transformational process involved can be overwhelming, especially if companies don't have information. How did you guys do it? Is there a particular resource you can look up to, or share us your journey?
Well, for us, it's more market driven, and we see the trend of sustainability, recycling is coming, and I think the whole sustainability thing has to start from the top, of the organization, where the directors, the CEO drive this initiative, even as a company as a whole, every office, every production floor, different division, we have 4 bins, one for plastics, one for aluminum, paper and glass. So first, sustainability takes time, and it starts from the culture. It starts from segregating the waste at source. Even for our customers, for our brand owners, customers, we tell them that, okay, if you want to pick up your stretcher, you cannot have labels, you cannot have OPP tape sticking on it, because otherwise when we bring your waste in, we will have to sort that out and all that with with the labor issues and all that. It makes things very difficult. So at the very point, culture, education, and then execution, and then we have to recheck again whether all these steps are followed properly. And then to ensure consistency, we will have to put processes in place. We will have to educate our team. We have to make sure that they are well versed with what can be recycled, what cannot be recycled, etc. So that's in a nutshell, that's how we do it.
Thanks. This market driven. I think the story is similar to what Jeff was sharing with us in the beginning. And Jeff, I want you to to weigh in on Mior's sort of comment. And he used to work with Carrefour, and one of the things that they were looking at were biodegradables. And what is your market-driven research tells you? Will this work? Is it too expensive? Are we ready? Do we have the right materials?
It's a good challenge. When we looked at it, there is a lot of confusing information around biodegradable. Are you just breaking down plastic into smaller bits that goes into society as plastic, but in smaller particles? And in which case, what problem are you solving by doing that? So we kind of shied away from that and really made our focus on reduce and reuse. And that was really our primary aims. And we can see that the actions we're taking, we're actually trying to change the way customers look and behave. I like what David was saying. The tone has to come from the top, and you do have to invest in time to explain, to educate, and to motivate people to change their cultures and their behaviors. And behaviors don't change overnight. We spent a year seeding the market with money. If you do the right thing, here's some money to get to a tipping point where we could switch off plastic bags and be comfortable that we weren't going to lose 25% of our customers who said, you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to go to the competitor next door. And that took a lot of time and effort. And I think the other point I would make, you've got to connect to the heart, not just the brain. So the person that I heard say, we want to debate it and talk about it and we need more information. But I think you just got to have some passion to pursue and go and do something. And you'll find the solutions along the way. And I think I would echo what CC said. The industry to collect waste and do something with it is underdeveloped. And I think if you had your hothouse or your sandbox that's a key player in that sandbox that needs to be present and interested in finding ways to collect waste and segregate it in the way David mentioned and put it to the right places. Then I think we've got the momentum for all the parties to get involved and make some changes.
Thanks, Jeff. Jay, the idea of having more regulations, do we need it? Can that then stem negative behavior on how we treat plastics across the value chain?
Obviously, less regulations always the best way moving forward. But I think from at least from our perspective is that we're trying to find a commercial value proposition to move the industry. That's one part of it. And if we do that, we are hoping that that would sort of facilitate the change of behavior. Let's look at waste, for example. Yeah, there's different systems of waste collection in the country, and that's sort of hampering how do you sort of address this in a strategic way. So if we are able to provide a commercial either through innovation or a business model that sort of makes sense of collecting the waste and reusing it in a meaningful, commercially meaningful way, then we're hoping that would sort of push the agenda forward. On the government part, I mean, I can't speak for the whole government, so to speak, but I think there has been, if you look at all the blueprints that has come out over the last, say, 2 years, from the Rancangan Malaysia 12, to industry-specific blueprints. You've got the oil and gas services blueprint, you have the circular economy roadmap, and a whole bunch of different blueprints, logistics blueprint, services blueprint, and so on. Everyone is trying to embed aspects of sustainability, but they all are looking at it at various different angles. So in the case of plastic, it's that one specific major area that is required to make the change. Unfortunately, it is currently, the way I look at it, is it's a very decentralized process. And because of that, it is not allowing that change to take place in a meaningful way. So different parties with different interests are trying to do that, but it's sort of maybe not moving the needle the way it needs to happen.
Thanks,
yeah,
Jeff.
so the regulations are there, but in order to move it, they're seeing it from a different angle altogether.
Yeah, I hear you. We have about 5 more minutes, and I want to sort of diverge a little bit. I want to get Thomas Franken online here, coming from Deutsche Messe. We hear this debate, this argument. We want to do some stuff. We do want to regulate. Human behavior in different parts of the world are really not helping. Will the EU take a more regulatory stance to allow products from certain countries to come into Europe only if countries have certain types of sustainable behavior as a prerequisite? We see with palm oil now, looking at environmental and social concerns. Will they be looking at economical behavior with regards to how the country behaves towards sustainability as a trade incentive, if I don't use the word trade barrier? Thomas.
Honestly, yeah, we are more the trade fair specialists and experts, and I think it would be a good question for especially our European associations, which are part of K. As far as I know, for sure, they always try to discuss these kind of questions also with the EU people and politicians, because sometimes they have a lot of regulations and rules which are, I think, from the industry perspective, it doesn't make sense at all. But for that reason, they're always trying to bring them also to our show to discuss these kind of things. I'm not too sure about the plans and the actual current discussions they are having about some of these routes you mentioned already, but for sure, I know that even our industries or our associations are telling us that they sometimes also like that there are more strict regulations, maybe not to let everyone with all the products in, so that there are regulations for the products entering the EU. So this is just the thing I know so far.
Thank you, Thomas. With that, I do like to sort of summarize, we have a very interesting industry that is, increasingly more exciting year on year, high growth, highest last year. And there seems to be very little incentives for people to also transform, maybe because of the opportunities. And we also have behavioral challenges, right? We have, Mr. Wee in the chat box, asking all of us, do we separate our trash at home, right? I try very hard to educate my children, but I feel sometimes I'm the minority among Malaysians. I know my parents don't separate their rubbish, certainly not my grandmother. And I think everyone has a role to play. Society, individuals, businesses, manufacturers, and government. I think, we talk about a whole of society approach, whole of nation approach. Unfortunately, I believe the problem with climate change and this idea of circular economy, we need a whole of world approach. And if one of these gears fall out of whack, we're going to cut it close. It's not going to, I'm a pessimist. I think we're not going to meet the temperature requirement by 2050. I think we'll flunk it, and there's going to be dire consequences from it. I'm already looking at climate change resilience rather than just climate change carbon neutrality. It's just a matter of fact. And with that, while we look at this huge business opportunity within plastics, I really think, we take heed from what CC and David and Jeff has done. Everything starts from the top. Design your products and your processes to align towards climate change, and the circular economy is one way to do it. We have the MPMA and Jay from Matrade to help us to get there, and the KFA will definitely also help us to look at different types of raw materials and equipment for us to get there as well. And with that, Lydin, thank you so much. Over to you.
Teresa, I just want to add on.
Yeah, go for it.
Before you close this, to what Jaya Shankar was saying, that you see I believe Malaysia has a lot of has enough regulations to regulate whether all the waste disposal issue. I think the issue is implementation. All right, I think implementation has to be enhanced. We have rules on segregation at source in our household, so it's about implementation, the will to implement, and if the government enforce it, I think people will follow. And MPMA has spent over, I think, easily the last 10 over years to promote 3 Rs: reuse, reduce, reuse, recycling, to the school children. And I know my kids are more recycling conscious than myself, So I think children, they know. I do segregation at home, and everybody follows. So I insist people everyone in my household throw their rubbish the right way. And I think if you persist, I think other people will follow, including the elderlies. So, and I believe that I mean, Sharissa, you point out that globally we need to do something. I believe the UNIA 5.5 program, where there will be, by 2024 there will be a binding agreement to be signed globally. So everybody have to commit to address the plastic pollution problem. Plastics need to be collected and recycled. Plastic does not belong to the environment, whether it's on the streets, in the jungle, or in the river, or in the sea. So plastic should not be there. It should not be there. All right. So I think hopefully UNIA, United Nations, can put this into effect, and all of us should support it. Malaysian government and the public. Thank you.
Thanks, CC. That's a nice roundup prior to closing. Lynn, over to you.
Thank you very much, fellow panelists. I know Thomas was taken off guard when we asked that question, but it's great that he could weigh in a little bit. Thank you again, Mr. Jayashankar Sharizal as our moderator, Mr. CC Chia, David, Jeff, and Thomas. We are indeed indebted for your time, and I'm sure a lot of us has learned quite a bit on what today is all about in terms of circular economy, why you should actually head on over to K and participate in all of the special forums that are being organized, and actually touch base with a lot of its exhibitors. Just in case everyone wants to find out, K is actually sold out. There is actually no space. And I know I have questions from individual exhibitors or companies who want to go now. And you know, I said, if I don't have space for you, go over to Matre because it's slightly easier to gain access. Individual companies who want to go now, I do not know whether we can find space for you, but the conversation is most important. So I welcome you to visit K, be open. Plastics is not a bad thing. It's a matter of human nature on how you use plastics and how you dispose of it. I myself an advocate of recycling, and we try our very best here too in my household to recycle, and I hope you guys are also doing the same. I'm a huge fan of Village Grocer and in all of its superstores, so you can imagine all my bags that I have right now in terms of recycling bags now piling up at the corner of my house. But at the end of the day, make sure register yourself to K at www.k-online.de if you want to go already as a delegation tour together with MPMA. Darshini, Francis, Sujata, and all are there for you. Mr. Jaishankar and Hussein, who is also very active in the chat group, is going to be there for you from Martrade. And I will pass this back over to Darshini for her onward moderation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Darshini, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite the panelists for a group photography session. We invite panelists to kindly switch on your video for the photography. Thank you.
Darshini, who's taking? We're like, hey.
Lailing, you make us feel like we are on a radio talk show.
Thank you. That is the aim, I think. You know who to call if you need another feature host. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. MPMA would like to thank Mr. Thomas Franken, Mr. Jayashankar, Mr. Sharizal, Mr. David Ang, Mr. Geoff King, and Ms. Lailing for participating in today's webinar. We sincerely hope all who are present today will visit the K show, and for companies interested to participate in K can contact Matre directly or MPMA. We will now end today's session. Thank you to all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.